I know you wrestled Booker T in front of a sold-out crowd in Minnesota, October 6th. Back in the confines of Atlanta, Eric Bischoff does a Prodigy chat on the 7th that says, nope, no offer for him. And then on the 8th, 48 hours after you wrestled Booker T in Minneapolis, you're in New York City getting picked up, and I assume a car service takes you out to Vince's house.
That was all the same week?
I think so.
Okay. That lines up right. So, yes. And I was going to find out if the grass was going to be greener. And Vinnie Mac sold it like it's a beautiful pasture with a back 40. And
well, talk to me about how that works. Did he do the whole, we're going to fly you up first class, pick you up in a limo, drive you out to the house routine?
No, I mean, more or less, we're going to fly you up. Of course, I mean, there wasn't any roll out the red. Well, I mean, it depends on what you define as that. Hey, I looked at it as this. Me and my father are going to go up and talk to Vince. It's a business meeting. Like, no more, no less.
Let me ask you this. Had you been to Vince's house before?
Yes. In the driveway. I'm just trying to think, but no, I didn't hang out at the, I know
that sounds crazy, but just humor me. There's lots of guys who have a story about, and then I got invited to the house. And there's supposedly like different levels, and guys have just, conspiracy theorists in wrestling. Surprise. But the idea being, hey man, if they meet you at the office, they think you're here. But if you get the house meeting, they think you're here. The idea being, it must have been a little different because I got the house invite. So-and-so did. Jericho even wrote in his book, I wore shirts that were 2 sizes too small. I put lifts in my boots. I made sure I did push-ups before he answered the door. Everybody is like, they understand my whole career, my aspirations for what I want to be in wrestling are made by the guy on the other side of this door. And this is his house. This is a big opportunity. So everybody has a sort of Vince McMahon house story. And I realize and recognize as a guy who grew up in the business, you're probably like, well, that's the bunch of goofiest Marcus shit I've ever heard. But that is the way it's discussed. So I just want to know from your experience.
I have never heard that.
Oh God, it's in every wrestler's book, Jeff. It's in all their shoot interviews. Like they all have stories about the house and the chef, and there were cookies, and me and Vince locked eyes on the last one, and everybody's got a Vince McMahon house story. So when I brought it up and you looked at me like I had flaming turds hanging out of my mouth, I'm like, this is a thing, Jeff. We got to talk about it.
And look, that's, again, I'm going to go back to my set point. Vince was a promoter that came to Memphis, and Lawler talked him into decking him at ringside, and he became, now this promoter of the WWF who had done 4 or 5 WrestleManias at this time, but now he's a manager at ringside and Deck Lawler, and a hell of an angle got him. I've always had it. That's growing up in the business. I just never viewed Vince. Now, respect, I don't want this to come across the wrong way. From the very first time, when you see him in the ring at WrestleMania 1, 2, and 3, it's his show.
Yes.
I've never seen that. My father do it. I'd never seen a promoter. In my mind, Don King was kind of that guy that, well, shit, he don't box. What the hell is this fruitcake do? That was my only context. When you see Vince command the ring, and obviously he's play-by-play and all that, but understanding that, Vince McMahon does exactly for New York what my father did here. And before that, Nick Gulas and Roy Welch. And over in Texas, it's Fritz Von Erich, and it's Bill Watts down in Louisiana, and it's Jim Sr. over, and Eddie Graham, and going on and on and on. Okay, here's this one cat that took it national with cable TV. That's how I viewed Vince. He put on his shoes every morning like everybody else, but his brain on a whole nother gear. But I never looked at the house and the cookies and that kind of stuff. I never.
Well, no, I wanted to ask, was this, and I think you said before, this is your second visit to the house, but the last time was just in the driveway. This is the first time you got, you made the comparison to Nick Saban. This is the recruiting visit.
Yes.
This is the first one.
Yeah.
So you said he put on a big show, and let's hear about what the presentation, what does he lay out to convince you?
Words in my mouth. So not big show, but over the top, relaxed, Let's talk about it. Hey, how you been? Let's small talk. Jerry this, and Jim Ross was there. And, you know, what I knew now, or what I knew in the next 30, 60, 90, 120 or a year and all that, I didn't realize that this was going right into the head coach. That's, you know, Jim was there, but the conversation was really a Jeff Vince conversation. And that was, I screwed up. I had no idea that how Jim looked at putting his roster together, that it was truly director of player personnel, whatever you want to call, you know, Jim was putting his roster together for the team, for Vince. And I went right in talking to the head coach, but it was a fun 2 or 3 hour conversation. You know, a lot of conversation because.
Hang on. I don't mean to cut you off, but I think I pride myself on being able to what I call speak Jeff.
Yeah.
And I think what you just said there in a roundabout way, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'm just trying to clarify. You said Jim was running player personnel, and boy, I screwed up. I just started talking to the head coach. It feels as if what you just said right there, translated from Jeff speak, is I maybe didn't show the proper respect to Jim Ross in that circumstance and felt like, well, I talked to the horse's ass if I could talk to the head. This is the real boss. This is who I focus my attention on. And JR was there. You weren't maybe intentionally being negative, but in your mind, I'm here to put on a Vince show. Oh, and Jim just happens to be here. In hindsight, maybe you wish you spent a little more focus or energy.
Hell, 1,000%. I was under the mindset that whatever Vince wants, Vince is going to get. And that's, but that wasn't, look, the next 12 months told me that in a very uncomfortable way. And the following 12 months of that, even in a more uncomfortable way. That's what
so you felt like, to say it differently, you were accidentally, unintentionally disrespectful to Jim Ross in that meeting.
Disrespectful, probably that's too strong.
Dismissive.
Yes, dismissive. Hey, young guys out there, I'm just going to give you a little, whoever's in the room
matters.
Okay.
If they're important enough to be in that room, they're important enough for you to pay attention to.
There is our golden nugget of the pod. If they're in the room, they're important.
So you leave with the deal, and I assume, based on the way I've heard some of these deals before, but I don't know because you haven't told us about it. Is it as simple as, or let me back up. When you first start the conversation, at any point, do you feel like you should address, and maybe you even game plan or seek your dad's advice? Hey, do we even talk about what happened before? Do I bring it up and say, hey, Vince, first of all, thanks for having me out. I appreciate you letting bygones be bygones and it being water under the bridge from before. Do you even broach that subject? Is it something you feel like as just a nicety to get out of the way?
We discussed it probably before we got on the plane, or when we got on the plane, or in the car. We discussed it beforehand, and it was very simple. Let Vince lead the conversation. He's the boss. It's just that simple. If he brings it up,
talk about it.
Talk about it. Yes.
Did he bring it up?
No.
I didn't imagine that he would. So I also understand that he is going to say things like, I could see, and fill in the blanks there. He might not make any sort of storyline promises. He might not necessarily make any sort of commitment to, you're going to be the champion or whatever, but he will get to this vision for what he sees for you and how he could see you fitting into the system. And then maybe he offers a dollar amount, or does he just kick it back to you and say, what are you looking for? How does that go?
We went outside and talked dollars, just me and him.
By the pool?
Like a back patio.
Okay.
Yeah. But before I get into that, here's kind of the takeaway from the meeting that I think is pretty cool. The new generation era was dead.
Yes.
On the WWE side, I guess we're talking 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. I'm just trying to think how the product began to have the attitude in it. Obviously, it wasn't called that at the time, but King of the Ring was in.
You're coming back at the right time. Shawn Michaels is jumping up and crotch chopping.
Yes.
With stuff Yes.
Stone Cold was in June.
Stone Cold get hot in June of 96. So now we're in 97. Stone Cold's super hot.
Yeah,
He's just been dropped on his head. He just stunned Vince McMahon at Madison Square Garden.
yeah, but 96 was when Stone Cold, that was kind of a pivotal point, kind of, but
Yes.
just
Yeah.
all that. So they had all of 96 and now, so a full year of that, in that we'll call it blurring the lines. That's where I'm going with it. The line.
October is when Pillman pulled a gun on Raw. So it's 1 year into the craziness.
Okay. Blurring the lines is kind of what I'm saying is, yes, you can jump the sharp or you can push the envelope too far, but the transition had taken place.
Yes.
So in the room, you have four, and I'm definitely the youngest. Boy, I miss those days. But you have Vince, you have JR, and my father. And all three of those gentlemen had an infinite amount of territory stories. Back in the day, although in reality it's not, but their mindset was they did a lot of stuff where they blurred the lines, Lawler and Dundee, and you can go to any territory in the country, but the blurring of the lines. So there was that kind of camaraderie talk about blurring the lines, which I thought was really cool, that Double J, the country music singer, world's greatest singer, world's greatest entertainer, world's greatest wrestler, all that over the top, new generation character, all that kind of stuff. The conversation that I can't wait to be Jeff Jarrett, that blurring the lines, let's get in there, no cowboy hat, no blinking lights, that kind of promo. Vince is like, I can just see you, you got a lot here, and we'll write some good stuff. Or not, he didn't say right. We'll do some good stuff, but just kind of the authenticity. That's what I remember. You always, what do I remember? What's my takeaway? Yes, yeah. I know we agreed on money. My takeaway was, I cannot wait to be this extension of Jeff Jarrett in the WWF.